No. Hello again. Viewers, I mean, it's still just me, what's my own rambling, but okay, I will talk about something else, right? Um, so, oh, I like, I'm on the internet, whether you say internet subcultures, niche cultures, very niche cultures, or you could say the possible depth of internet. I I explored everything, right? From onion websites to surface to mid deep websites, everything. And the one thing which I saw in the 7 to 8 years is that autism, or aloofness or coldness, or being lonely, is now being treated as some kind of aesthetic by this generation, at least in my generation. Okay, so I don't know if the prior of the sorry of the previous generations, how they treated the people with autism, or maybe the people who are not very good at expressing themselves. uh, but the increasing rise, people say, main loneliness epidemic. There is nothing. There is no gender bias in loneliness or anything. There is no epidemic. It's just what they are feeding, because we, like at least me, consume most of the information, the low chunk of information from the internet, because of course I don't talk to people, and as I said in my previous video, I don't talk to people, so majorly my most of the time, apart from studies and everything, goes to the internet. And the internet has a very um, a unique way of providing you information. The algorithms are very precise in understanding you, and it's unique to every internet user, right? So, um, well, you say, uh, I'm sorry, someone was outside, I guess. Yeah, sorry, someone was outside, I guess. So I was interrupted. Yeah. So what I was talking about is the increasing amount of people who are expressing themselves and treating autism or ADHD or other neurodivergent um, other neurodivergent symptoms as some kind of a cool aesthetic. It's bad. It's not good. It's like you're LARPing as someone who we people like us was treated as some other a very unique group of people, but people are now treating this as a badge of what as a pride badge, which is not good, because you do not know exactly how tough it is to work with autism or ADHD or both. Let me give you an example. Like, if I turn to my, you know, turn to my younger self, I see myself struggling, like literally at every public, public, um, like every portrayal of my uh, public persona. I've always struggled with it, right? And you see, I was always bothered by sounds and extreme randomness around me, and it crawled my skin. It felt very unreal. whenever I went to parties or get-togethers with my parents, or when I was, of course, young, it doesn't suit me. I was always outside the crowd, and people saw me like I'm some kind of a retarded, or some kind of a proudy kid. Well, they're both biases that people have against people like us. At least this was my experience. Maybe you all have some different experiences. But let's see. So I'm not here to again, uh, tell like how am I so unlucky and shit. No, nobody is, you know, um, unlucky, or in the sense that something that happened to me, some kind of failure, is due to my conditions, or no. You have to live and cope with your conditions, and you realize this at a young age, and by realizing it at a young age, um, it was beneficial for me. Like know, I did know how to handle people better, like most of the other, introvert or autistic people, and it helped me cruise through, you know, till until now. Uh, and like next, we could talk about um geopolitics, maybe. Who cares about geopolitics? Everything is controlled by like few elites. I know it sounds like a Illuminati conspiracy theory, but it's not. It is true that some group or some families, you know, they have the leash over major populations. At least if we are talking about first world Western countries, right? Because they're wealthy, and to manage and to keep their power intact, they do, or they apply some ways, like we see in like the conspiracy theories that arises, oh, that the Jews control everything, and like that. I do know that all of that thing is just echo chambers screaming that, yeah, yeah, this works, it's wrong. But there is some truth to it, because look at both the sides, far left, far right. Don't talk about centrist people, they're hypocrites. So far left, they have their own problems because they tend to, try to mold society into a fucking utopia or something, like people living in peace and everybody is equal, multicultural, and shit like that. It never works, because one community is ought to discriminate or treat the community of other people differently. So of course, these things arises differences, and thus we get racism. And look, racism is ingrained in every human from early days. It's not um, like a new thing. Well, of course, the winners decide what the history should look like. Like, let's see here. Europeans are, well, they were the kings or the leaders of the medieval period. Like, they literally uh, conquered many lands in the medieval era, and of course, till now, their legacy is maintained, because their ancestors from the medieval period, they gathered and you know established a well-maintained empire, and built wealth, like very much. So of course, most of the European countries are first world, and of course the conquered lands, or the colonial countries, or the colonial the colonies of those European kings and countries are poor, as compared, like comparing to that. people are getting out of it, like China and India, and majorly Southeast Asia, South Asia, and other countries, African countries. Yeah. So, not going into that, I'm just saying that we were talking about racism, right? And racism is an old concept, and it is labeled racism because it changed its form, um, based on color, at least because the Europeans are white in skin color. So of course, racism, the definition of racism changed to skin-based differences because racism is a broad concept. Racism can be done on ethnicities, cultures, subcultures, and even names in other castes, like we see in the Indian caste system, right? Yeah. So, let me give you an example from early days. You see, when let's talk about East Asia. So, the major power in East Asia, I'm talking about ancient times, medieval times, when Japan was not the major power in East Asia. I'm talking about China and Korea. So the Shangyan dynasty, or and the further dynasty like the Zhou dynasty, like right, uh, we see that these people named the land of Japan as Va. I was reading this and I was like, Va, or there's a Hanji style like writing of this, which meant sh- um, inferior people, short people. You see, it's a derogatory term against the Japanese, and at least the people who were living at that time in the Japanese lands, right? So the Sinosphere influence of uh, like how they treated countries, ethnicities, and races, it's pretty much evident because you need to control uh, the sentiment of people. Because if you have no public stronghold, there can be no political power. Let me give another example of China itself. So the Zhou dynasty came into power, and they were the only dynasty in China that differed from the Taoist idea of emperors. And by the Taoist ideas of emperors meaning that the the kings, which the emperors were only to be males. So it's a male-dominated area field, right? And the Zhou dynasty was the first and the last in China to give the only empress of China, and she was named Wu Zetian. Sorry for my pronunciation. I don't know, like, but I guess it's pronounced like this, Wu Zetian. So she embraced the ideas of Buddhism, Chakravartin ideas. So the it Chakravartin. I guess it's spelled as Chakravartin, Chakravartin ideas of administration. So it's predominantly Buddhist, and the origin it came from the Indian subcontinent because Buddhism is predominantly, I mean, it was formed, or it expanded from this land, the Indian subcontinent. I'm talking about subcontinent because there is many controversies like where Buddhism started. I'm not going into that, bro. Countries are, like India and the the divided countries of present South Asia. The Indian subcontinent is um are a modern borders. At earlier times, there is nothing like that. Nepal, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Bhutan, they were all of the same land, same people, to be precise here. So, I that's why I'm saying Indian subcontinent to avoid any controversies. And still, if there are people I know that would target me, but I'm sorry if I offended you or something. I'm sorry. So let's move back to the empress, the only empress of China. So Wu Shixian used the Chakravartin idea to become the only female emperor of China, and she was the only one to 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 to, to send missions to the Japanese lands. And by missions to the Japanese land, I meant like the authorization of removing the term wa, the derogatory term wa, to Nihon, which is now the official um term for the people of Japan, at least. In Japanese, what we call Japan is Nihon, right? And still in use right now. So it was, I guess, authorized or approved in 704 or something. I'm not precise about the dates, but you could take away 1 or 2 years from it. So uh, yeah, around that time. So they changed the name, and not only the authorization of the name change, but also um, the um, yeah, and also uh, when the Zhou dynasty was in power, and also the after the Zhou dynasty fell and the further kingdoms of China, they and the Koreans. I don't know I can pronounce it right or what, but there is a place there which an old place. There was a name in Korea, uh, old place. They said like it's the city of many. I don't know, a big ass city, basically, and it's called Payakshe or something like that. I don't know. If any Asians are watching this, please correct me. So the Payakshe architects also went to Japan, and they created um, the castles we see in Japan now. So you see that the Sinosphere influence on Japan is so much dominant. Like literally, their architecture is influenced by the Korean architects and the Chinese approvers or the mission sent to Japan. And the need of creating castles and capital cities was in rise at that time, because the started the timeline, like from 690 to 750, was the era of creating capital cities, sub-cities, head cities, districts, and something like that. Because we see a very high rise in capital cities in China, and the Tang dynasty was a very powerful dynasty at that time. And to counter that, Japan and Korea started their, um, you know, they boosted their the creation of these kind of castles to impress, or you could say to show China that, yeah, we are also powerful. And that is why there was a sudden rise in the castles, the in Japan. So, and there were like in Nara, the first, and most of the capital or the castles were made in the Nara region of Japan, and then it shifted according to who came into power, like what king came into power and what was their um, what was their belief to where the capital city should be located of Japan, and it changed according to that until we got to the Heian period, which was the last change that was made. I guess maybe the last change made to the capital city of Japan. So And now, when China fell, and we see that China lost most of his her. I don't know. China is a masculine or a feminine term, so I don't know what pronoun to use for that. So China, when it lost its power, and the influence of the Tang Dynasty reduced like drastically, Japan rose. Japan saw influx of foreigners, like the Portuguese, Dutch. Many people came, and they saw a need of, you know, to protect themselves, to protect their culture, because Japan is far away. That even from China, we see that there are many, like the maritime routes of that time were complex, even at that time. So Japan is far away from the mainland Asian and Eurasian plate. So people coming from outside the Japanese of that time felt um, a need to counter this thing, to protect their culture, and even like protect their thing which was present at that time, of course, because they did know that the influence of outsiders would um, change people according to them. So they saved it from pollution, if I must say, if I'm allowed to say that word, pollution. Okay, so Japan rose to power. They were the first ones. They were the most earliest one in East Asian region, or the Sinosphere, to rose, or sorry, to industrialize themselves faster than China, Korea combined. And when we see that, when the Japanese uh, join hands with the Axis powers, and they attacked Manchuria, you know, and China fell into hands of Japan, the racism thing again arises. Now the Japanese are against the Chinese, and they're creating derogatory terms against the Chinese. Derogatory in the sense, the racism is basically weakening of certain ethnicities, because they do not align with your mindset, or maybe your belief system, or other things, right? So racism is a way, a soft weapon that is used against nationalities, empires, like at least in the ancient times, and also now in modern times we use to weaken or mm, people like that. So China is still, so you see that Japan, they're like, I know this kind of thing would piss off most of the Chinese, Koreans, and Japanese combined. I welcome you to, I'm open to any kind of comment you want to give to me. I mean, abuse me. I don't fucking care about. But I'm just gonna say this: racism is kind of a coping mechanism that people weaponize, or use to save their own arse. You know what I'm saying? Like, whenever shit, or whenever things goes out of hand, we tend to blame it on the weaker ethnicities or the weaker sections of the society. And let's say, for example, like India, whenever somebody point towards what are the problems in India, we tend to, you know, get into back foot and say, "Oh, look at Pakistan, look at the neighboring, look at the neighboring shithole." To compare my shithole, we are a better shithole than that shithole. What the fuck? Yeah. So I'm talking like this because it is literally what happened, and I gave you an example of the southern Asian region. You could see in East Asia too. You could see how the rise of the China after post-war rise of China is and the power of the CCP and the influence of CCP in Taiwan, Japan, Korea combined. The people of Japan abuse or tend to be racist against the Chinese and Koreans in the name that they are foul-mouthed. They do not know culture. They do not you know um, abide by rules. Are you sure, bro, that you're good at generalizing such a massive population? It's not always good to generalize population, but as I said, it's a soft weapon. It is used to cope with your own problems, to project your own problems onto the weaker sections of the society. I'm not saying the Chinese are good. Of course, they are the ones who are, increasing the drug peddling, or increasing the network of the of the drugs that goes into Japan. I'm aware about that. I'm just saying that the weapon, it's not good to generalize people basically, and I'm not saying that it. Uh, but yeah, you could it's evident in the echo chambers we see, like we see that if something happens in a first world country, done by some brown person, you weaponize it against the whole Mediterranean region and shit like that, bro. Most of the people that do these kind of things are very small in number. If the algorithm pushes you because you want to see that kind of content because it engages you, that is why you see multiple posts of that, only that kind of thing, bro. Look, most of the people, like if you see the contemporary world, the major populations, the populations which are at the top are China and India. So they are the most easiest, and not India, I'm talking about China and the Southern Asia in general. They're the most easy ones to target because even if there are 0.1% doing the same thing, it is it is automatically more than the population of certain countries. So you're, of course, of course, you cannot escape to see that kind of thing. And by the way, in the irony is that countries in southern Asia, like when there's something happens in Pakistan or maybe Nepal or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, they tend to uh, dump that into to India, to Indians. Why? Because they are an easy, or you could say they're trying to save their own asses, their own image. So they use the most easy target. You could see the same thing when something happens in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnamese people, or dump their own insecurities to Malaysians, their own problems to Malaysians, or and vice versa. This shit happens. So racism, or basically biases, are coping mechanisms, or easy weapon to engage and just fight. And the most interesting uh, fighting ground is now the internet. And all these tools, weapons, methods are used there in vast amounts. Not everybody, not every eight, like if you see the people who can use mobile phones and internet, maybe what, um, 10% of the whole population of humans, and within that there can be like these echo chambers, and it's like 0.00001%. But the algorithm pushes that kind of content because you are most likely to be engaged in that because it aligns with your own interests or your views or biases. So the pleasing of your own biases, the our brain wants stimulus that caters with our own belief system, and that's how we see uh, things we see on the internet. I mean, enough ranting, I guess. Well, if you have any problems or with my views or something, or you wanna um, elaborate on what I said, or maybe present some more points, you can. Because I am not accustomed to do a linear kind of talk because I love to ramble and I have an autistic brain, so I just spew many random things. Like I could, one time I could talk about research papers, and then another time I could talk about some 4chan thread in the same video. So I'm just, you know what I'm saying, right? So until then, see ya.